Peace and respect. Welcome to episode 16 of Get Buckets with Coach Gus Gauntlett and Friends. I'm joined by another great coach this week, representing the East Coast, my former stomping grounds. Today we have Coach Tang Tian, who's currently the associate head coach of the varsity team at Fieldston High School, which is right in the top of the Bronx. He has a cool playing and coaching experience in that he played D3 at Manhattanville College in New York, and then had coaching stops at St. Thomas Aquinas, Sarah Lawrence, and Western Connecticut State. And he is also the coach for the Pro Skills AAU team out there in New York as well. So, Tom, welcome to the coach, brother. How you feeling today?
Oh, great. Happy to come here and talk some basketball. Stuck in the snow here for 2 days. It's a nice little getaway virtually, I suppose. Yeah.
I remember the snow days. They're cool for the first day, and that second day, whoo, yeah,
yep.
it can set in. I love it. Well, we got connected through a past guest, Drew Heath, who was a great person, a great player, great coach, and I'm happy to make the connection with you. How is it with? I just kind of give our viewers a take of what's it like right now with high school basketball in New York. I know in the Bay Area, it's pretty much cooked. It's a wrap for this season. They tried pushing to the spring, but it looks like it's not going to happen. What's the status right now in New York City for high school basketball?
I think it depends on the conference. So for us, at Fieldston, we're in the Ivy League, which is, the school, a few schools there are, independent high school, private high schools that are super high academic. So we don't have a season. And so we had, depends on the individual schools, we were able to have practices pretty much with whoever we have on campus for the day for like the last, I would say 2 months or so. And so our practices ended on January 29th. So we don't have game this year.
Okay.
However, the local Section 1, Section 9 high schools, so this is right outside of New York City, they're having a shortened season in, I think it started last week and it goes to probably the first or second week of March. They're just going to play like a bunch of games pretty much back to back. So they're going to have a short season. New York City high school, nothing going on at the moment. So it just, if you're private, it sort of depends on, what your conference is and what they're doing. And a lot of the time depends on your individual school. So it's kind of, it's been a kind of an interesting year to say the least.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that, the players got to, even in that time that you were able to practice, I hope that was some good time just to be around the guy, the team and get that energy out, and hope, fingers crossed for next season. I know it's usually similar in East Coast that basketball is usually a winter sport, right? Like kind of like November to March or April, essentially.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm wishing you good luck for this upcoming season for sure.
Appreciate that.
Cool. Well, I know you've seen the show before, so we're going to hop right into it. I know you have it all on the computer, so feel free to start sharing your screen and show us what you got.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm sharing my screen now. Okay. So, yeah, this is the first one. So, yeah, before, we're talking about late game plays, right? So before I even go into the plays, it kind of just, my philosophy is sort of with late class situation, it's just stick with something simple and limited passing, right? So, ideally, yes, you want to get a great shot or a good shot. But honestly, most of the time, if we can just get a shot, get a look for late game, that's good enough for me. I mean, I think, if you're just, watch NBA basketball, obviously the highest level guys can create their own shots a little more. So you barely see a team doesn't get a shot off, right? But like, I think if you look at, the high school or even the lower college level, a lot of the time, if they're, teams are running something too complicated, they either run out of the time, they have to chuck up a shot that they don't want at all, or they just, they simply don't get a shot off. So for me, it's just, whatever we run, let's try to stick with something simple. Let's keep the ball in the best player's hands and just get a shot. If we can get a shot, I think, it has a chance of going in. So this first diagram here, this is just something, let's say, this is just a play. This is not the actual play, but this is a play we will run during the game, right? So for example, 2 years ago at Sarah Lawrence College, we, actually put in this Spain ball screen play which is essentially come off a high ball screen, but you have a shooter back screening the ball screener. You see this action a lot, especially in European basketball, international basketball, and quite a lot in the NBA nowadays as well. So, for example, this is the look that we will run, give the other team, I would say, let's say 2 years ago, at least 5 times a game, right? So they will see this alignment and sort of probably expect us to run this play, which is, you have a one in this case, your best player with the ball in their hand, come off a high ball screen. You have a shooter back screening five man who just set the ball screen, who's going to roll to the basket after the back screen. 2 is going to pop out, 5 rolling just as always, and 1's trying to turn the corner and make a decision and see what's going on from there. So now, let's say we're at a late game situation. This is another play we drill for a special situations, right? It's the same exact alignment, which I think for most good coaches, if you scout the alignment, right? You kind of see the alignment. You're like, okay, I know what's going on here. So maybe the other team is calling out, okay, this is what they're doing, and you're just showing them a different wrinkle in this case. So instead of 5 setting the ball screen right away, the 5 is going to go pin down screen for 2. And this point looks like a sprint out ball screen, right? So 5 is going to screen for 2, and 2 is going to come out instead of ball screen. Well, at the end, so what's going to happen is 2 in this case should be your best shooter on the team, and he's going to come out looking like a sprint out ball screen, but ghost the ball screen, which essentially you just slip the ball screen, not set it, and slip into space, so to speak. And 1 obviously trying to turn the corner as always. So in this case, especially I think a lot of the higher level teams, you switch pretty much everything for late game, trying to prevent a shot. So in that case, we have the initial screening action. So you just switch that, and we're ghosting this. What's happening, a lot of the time on ghost is you get 2 on the ball because there's a miscommunication. They're switching, so either end up 2, the 2 guard either getting a wide open shot, or the 2 people maybe go with both, both defenders went with a shooter, and then you have 1 with the ball going downhill and kind of go, maybe a shot for himself or for somebody else on the floor, create, or even just a little distraction to get 1 a little bit of advantage going downhill. I would like that scenario for my team, in the last 10 seconds or whatever the case it may be. So that's my play right there. I'll stop the screen sharing, or do you want me to keep the screen on from now?
You can keep it up. That'd be
okay.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you said I really appreciate. First, keeping it simple.
Yep.
A lot of the coaches I've had in the past, they talked about, if I want to run an effective end of game play to get a really important bucket, I don't want, number one, I don't want it to be the first time that my players have ever seen that play, because
Right.
if it's the first time, you're not going to have that same level of crispness. And number 2, keeping it simple, and as just kind of echo your sentiments, putting it in your best player's hand is usually going to give you the best opportunity to get a bucket. So I like both those things. And one thing that I like that you said that I'm not sure I've heard a couple of the coaches, past guests have said this before, but just 2 different plays, but with the same formation. So that the team, the defensive team is maybe expecting one thing, but you're going to hit them with something different. But I love that. I love that element. Where did you learn this play in particular? This alteration of I know the Spain back cut or back screen. I've seen a bunch, but where did you learn this in particular?
Yeah, the Spain pick and roll. I think initially it was one. I believe it's the 2012 the Olympics where Spain that year, the Spanish national team, they were running a lot of that, which is I think they were running it mostly on the wing. Either Powell or Marc Gasol would set a ball screen, and they have a shooter back screening them, rolling to the basket, right? So I think that's where I first saw it, and then obviously the online breakdown started to come out, and I always just thought it was a very tough coverage, right? Because essentially even in the NBA, a lot of times to run it, if the other team don't have, because you have essentially 3 players involving the screening action at the same time. You know, if you switch everything, a lot of time, yeah, that's kind of the best way to contain it. But you know, if a team just know the basic pick and roll coverage, and now you get into that back screening element into it, especially the lower level, you get wide open layup. You know, it's kind of crazy. But this special situation play, I kind of just came up with it myself. Like the initial play, like this setup, like we ran this, you know, at Sarah Lawrence. We put it in. We were actually pretty successful with this play. And end up being one of the late game play we actually use a lot in the second half of the season. So I was just kind of thinking, you know, if the other team is expecting this play, what's the other variation? What's the other wrinkle that we can go to? So that's, you know, that's where I came up with this wrinkle, just by kind of just thinking about it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'll keep that in mind, and a good reminder. I mean, the Spain pick and roll, you know, for anyone not familiar with that, is such an effective play. And one of the great things that it does is it has on defense, all of a sudden a center or a power forward who's guarding that first high pick and roll has to deal with a screen from a feisty guard. And usually 4s and 5s aren't so good at dealing with those screens, especially that far away from the basket.
Absolutely.
Be really skilled to deal with that.
Absolutely.
And it's a good challenge as well for that for your 2 coming up to set a good screen. I mean, with the except not when they're ghosting it like you have here at the end, but just on the basic Spain pick and roll, it's a good skill development to teach your guards how to set powerful screens as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a guard setting a back screen, you know, that's sort of what the Utah Jazz in the 90s make their living, just on that, you know, Stockton setting the cross screen for Malone. That's, you know, that's really what they always run down the stretch. I mean, essentially it backfired when you know, Jordan saw that coming and then, you know, pick Malone's pocket. But, you know, that's really like, you know, a 1 to 5 screen, 1 to 4 screen. It's always a very tough coverage, especially when your guard is a feisty screener like John Stockton. So
no doubt, back you could screen with your elbows a little more. I don't think you can get away with that as much these days, but Stockton definitely held that down for a good 15 years.
Yep, absolutely.
I love it. All right, cool. Well, thanks so much, Coach. You can go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
Yep.
That one up. All right. So for mine, I wanted something that, and it's funny, like now that I hear you talk about, you know, keeping it simple, the action that I created has the first look is kind of just your most straightforward, simple look. And then I wanted to add another extra option at the end, just in case the first look was taken away. So just to start it up, got the 1 up top, 3 in this corner, 2 here, 5 at the elbow, and 4 down here on the block. And just kind of get into the play, we'll have the 1 dribbling here, just across the key. While that dribble is happening, 5 is coming down just to get some movement here. And then the 3 in this corner is starting to creep for their cut, which they're going to be coming soon, as is the 2. So the 5 is setting the screen for the 4. 4 is going to roll up to the high post, catch this entry pass here from the 1. 1's got the ball. It's going to make that entry pass to the 4. So at that point, just kind of clean this up a little bit. Now we have our 5 down here. Our 2 is creeping. By the time the 4 has the ball, and really ideally on that pass, the 3 is just continuing that cut. And so at the most basic level, the first look is this 2 and 5 screen for the 3, who's going to be coming off, whether it be an elbow, you know, a mid-range jumper, or the team is down 2, maybe you extend it out to the 3 for spacing. And for the sake of this draw, I'm going to have the 3 come out to the wing, looking for a 3 there. That's just the most basic look, you know, just a high post entry, 3 coming off a double screen from the 2 and the 5 for an open shot. So if that goes great and the 3 is open, I want the 4 to make that pass, get that jumper. All right, that's the first look. However, on the first kind of alteration, if the 3's defender maybe fights through that screen, or maybe they switch and the 3 is able to still catch the ball but not have a clean look, then the second option is, you know, I think for me, I would say normal mentality is after this 2 sets of the screen, you might think they might, either clear out to this corner or maybe flare out just to balance out the floor a little bit. So as to kind of go against that, what I'm going to have is I'm actually going to have the 2 fake like they're clearing out to the weak side, and then 5 just swivel around, set that screen, and I want the 2 to take a few hard, fast steps to convince their defender they're going out this way, and actually circle back and take that screen off of the 5 and dive in back to the corner that they started at. And so that way, if the 3 doesn't have that shot, we're going to have this 2 coming off this screen. If they decide to switch this, you're going to have a 5 chasing the 2 out there, which I like. I think this is going to be the most confusing screen for them. I think at this point, 2's defenders are going to be trying to play this weak side. But also, if the 3 were to drive, they're going to may think they have to stay in the middle to make sure they're not make sure they are protecting the key. But I think that second screen is that they're not going to be expecting, and the 2's just going to circle around that, ideally on the high side, and then out here in the corner. So the second option would be the 3 passing it down to the 2 for the corner 3. And then lastly, if for any reason the 3 just was so over defended initially that they couldn't even catch the ball, and the 4 had to eat it, had to hold it, there's a possible it's not my ideal pass, but it's an option if needed, is that 4 actually making that pass to the 2 just in case they weren't able to get it to the 3. So that's the look. Again, starting off with your basic, just double screen for your 3 coming off on the weak side screen, and then 2 faking that clear out and circling right back for a screen from the 5, dive into that corner.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you have, your personnel has 2 shooters on the team, like both 2 and 3, and your team is good at executing, that's I think especially that second
right
after the initial stagger double screen, the 2 coming out of the second screen of the 5, like that could be really tricky to sort of, especially you haven't seen this look before, it hasn't been scouted. It will be a tough coverage.
Yeah, I hear the execution part of it, especially with what kind of came in my head when I was drawing it up was height of Steph, Clay, and the Warriors before KD was a lot of that. Steph screens for Clay, who then turns around screens for Steph, and just all of that misdirection. They just had teams just totally lost, and you had to respect the screen because they're both such great shooters. So definitely for the personnel, as you were saying, yeah, that 2 and 3 both want to be respected as shooters. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you have that kind of personnel, they can just circle around each other, which what was Golden State doing a lot of the time, right? And then they also have the best passing bigs in the league at the time, in Andrew Bogut and Draymond. So
right.
Yeah, that was just such a. I mean, when you have a personnel like that, I mean, how do you even game plan it?
So yeah, they were on a different level.
Yep, different level.
Word. Well, cool, man. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback, and thank you for checking it out. With every show, I always like to ask, an unscripted question. I'm interested, like you've had experience at the D3 level, both playing and then also coaching at D3 and D2 colleges. Like, is there like a consistent methodology or ideology as a coach that you've brought with your teams at those different stops that either you're continuing on now with Fieldston and your AAU team, or now that you're at the high school level and at the AAU level, are you adjusting some things that are different compared to your time at the college level?
Yeah, I think initially, especially when I was playing, I was very into the X's and O's side of things, right? And I still am. I think I still consider myself, a pretty X's and O oriented coach. However, I think throughout the years, especially being around different schools, different demographics, different types of athletes, both men and women, and I think that's almost less important when it comes to basketball in terms of like if you can actually connect with the players, if you can build that relationship. And I know it sounds cliche, it sounds kind of corny, so building relationship, but it's really like when you can get to know the person behind it, behind basketball and knows what drives them, that's actually a lot more important than what you run per se, right? Or your style of play. I think X's and O's why, if you're smart enough, you'll figure it out based on your personnel, right? And that's another thing I would think, initially, I was a Lakers fan growing up, right? Triangle was the first offense that I really studied. And at first I thought, okay, when I started coaching, if I, eventually I have a team, I'm just going to run straight up triangle, right? Well, obviously the style of play of basketball is changing throughout the years, but also, when you have triangle, you need guys that can really make plays at the pinch post, at the low post, and the mid post, which it's becoming more rare nowadays, right? Nowadays you have guys who can create shots off of high pick and rolls with the open spacing. You have a lot of guys like that, but you don't have many guys, like Kobe or MJ, where you can just give the ball at the pinch post and expect them to create a shot from there. Even Carmelo Anthony wasn't able to really do that with the New York Knicks. So, now for me, it's more about, know your players, know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and figure out your system from there. But that to me, it's less important. I have no coaches who are extremely smart, X's and O's wise, but, not the greatest people's person. And then maybe their team don't play as hard for them, right? And meanwhile, you have other teams where they run very simple stuff. You look at what they do, there's no secret to it, but the coach commands a lot of respect, and their guys just will run through a wall for them. And those teams are much harder to play against, in my opinion, with someone who's running the best stuff, but their guys don't respond that well to the coaches. So
no doubt. I appreciate what you said about relationships, and it actually echoes, a lot of the sentiments of nearly almost every single guest I've had on this show. And it's a blessing for me as I'm still, developing my coaching style and learning, just to hear just coaches with such an amazing wealth of years of experience in coaching. And, at this point in their career, they're saying exactly what you're saying, just the relationship is number one. So yeah, I don't think it's corny. I think it should be the standard of, of the model of coaching, building with your players, connecting with them as people. And usually the results come with it as well.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the time, even, if you're maybe, more old school people complaining about, guys are not as, maybe back then you can just, even when I was growing up, and I grew up in China, right? So we don't really question that much in terms of when we're kids as players. If a coach tell you to do this, you do it, right? Even maybe you have questions, but that growing up in that culture, and especially, growing up in the 90s, I think maybe the relationship part wasn't as important. You could, you have that kind of style where you can just my way and the highway, and you just tell you that dictatorship sort of, so to speak, style could work. Maybe it doesn't work like that anymore. And I don't think it's a bad thing neither. It's just like now you have to explaining the why. If a player question you, okay, why are we doing this? I think a lot of the time, maybe you felt like, okay, like, why are you questioning me as a player? Maybe you felt attacked. But in terms of that, instead of that, I think, yeah, explain it, like, this is why we're doing this. I think, like, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think, if guys are questioning more things now, and for you, you have to know what you're talking about, and then you have to back it up with your knowledge as well. So.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for your work and your words. And I'm really excited for you to get going with Pro Skills out in New York City, as well as next season with Fieldston. Thanks for joining the show, and we'll stay in touch. All right, you have a great rest of your weekend.
Absolutely. You too, man.
All right, peace.